I'm Kay Helm, and this is the Life and Mission Podcast, Why You Need to Tell Stories to Raise More Funds. When I joined David Oak's end-of-year fundraising, and you may have heard me talk a little bit about this, I joined his fundraising accelerator in August 2021, and David and I were experimenting. We worked with 8 small organizations, and we walked them through their year-end fundraising. And none of these organizations had done their year-end campaigns before. All of them ended up doing better than they'd ever done by year's end. And some saw wild success, but others struggled. And the difference, at least as far as David and I could see, were their ability to tell powerful stories in writing. So we talked and we said, okay, we have to do something in that area of writing, and there has to be some way to help them with their written storytelling projects. And that's when Mission Writers was born. We're still learning and experimenting, but I've become even more convinced that this is going to make a tremendous difference for these small organizations and their ability to raise funds. And today I want to look at the reasons, though, why we need to tell stories and why we need to become skilled at telling stories. So these are some things that happen when we tell stories. Stories help us to connect. When you listen to a story, your brain waves actually start to synchronize with those of the storyteller. Research shows that compelling stories actually cause our brains to release oxytocin. It increases empathy, and it can have the power to affect our behaviors because it creates empathy. Telling a story actually inspires more generosity than simply reporting information. So this is important to you as a fundraiser. Stories also help us remember who we are, what we're about, and what are those things that we hold dear. And what you need to know with that when fundraising is that donors give to their values. So telling stories that reflect those values help donors make good decisions about whether or not you're a good match. The other thing that stories do is they reveal truths. Your storytelling can help people see the world in a new way. They can shift perspectives, overcome prejudices, and we believe stories more than we believe facts alone. Okay, so stories really are a vehicle for carrying truth. And done well, stories can offer dignity and context for your beneficiaries and give them a voice. Stories help us see things from another person's point of view. Stories help us walk a mile in someone's shoes, right? So stories, they put our critical minds aside for a moment. We willingly enter into the narrative and we try to find ourselves in the stories. Okay, so what's happening there is a story gives us context to make sense of all those things. Okay, you don't just need a story to fill space in your newsletter. You need a story to show donors what they can accomplish by giving to your mission. Where do they fit in the story? Not just through giving, but in the big picture of a world where this thing is a problem. They can help be a part of the solution. They can reflect their values. They can glorify God. They can ease suffering. They can experience deep personal satisfaction by stepping into this story and by playing an active role. And so you tell them that story, you help them place themselves in that story, and then you give them a call to action. So every known culture tells story. This is the way we make sense of the world and our place in it. And all through the donor journey, especially with people who are not yet aware of you and your mission, stories are going to help draw them in and help get them to know, like, and trust you. When we get involved or immersed into a story, we drop our defenses. We actually will allow ourselves to be carried along, right, into the world. Think of the last fiction book you read, really good one, okay? You get carried along into the world of the storyteller, and your brains actually your brain releases these chemicals that affect your mood, your connection, your creativity, your focus, your decision-making. And in our ministries, stories are an invitation also into this world that maybe they're not familiar with. So if you think about your particular situation, I'm going to give an example. If I live in America and I'm immersed in American church culture and all my friends are Christians, maybe I don't give a lot of thought as to what it's like not to know who Jesus is, not to have ever seen a Bible. And when you need funds to go and preach the gospel in that environment, or to live in another culture for several years and learn a language and helps a group have a Bible in their own language, let's say. You can't just start out there in the field. You have to bring that context. You have to bring that world to your donors and give context to what you do and why you do it. And the way you do that is by telling these compelling stories. When donors don't understand, you tell them stories that show, not tell, why you do something in a certain way. Okay, that's just a couple of examples, but think of your mission. What are some of the questions that people ask about what you do, about why you do it? What are some misconceptions that people have? Okay, what do you wish people knew? Those are really great places to start. Think about the stories now. When you're thinking about a story that you can tell, how can you tell a story that shows them why you do those things the way you do? And this is part of the storytelling journey for us, right? Is how do you find these stories and how do we tell them in that way to help people understand? And that's part of what we do with Mission Writers. So what stories can you tell to help donors to connect with the hands-on work, especially if your mission is far away and they are not likely to ever experience it personally? And even if they do come visit, if they make a trip out there to see what you're doing or to be involved in it in some way, how can you tell the stories to give context to what they're doing so that it has even more impact? I'm convinced that this is one of the most powerful things we can do, is to tell better stories and to think about why we tell stories in the first place. Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this, please tell a friend, share this episode with somebody that you think will get something helpful from it. I'm Kay Helm, and this is the Life and Mission Podcast. Find your voice, tell your story, change the world. Hey, it's Kay here. There's one big truth about fundraising that people do not tell you when you start out. And that is, if you struggle to tell stories, you will struggle to raise funds. But what kinds of stories do you tell? How do you tell them? Where do you find them? How do you put them together? And how do you do all that while you're running your ministry, while you're doing all the work and all the things that you have to do? It does not have to be overwhelming. This is my good news. And also, I want you to hear this. Fundraising is not just about asking for money. Raising funds for your mission does not have to feel icky. Fundraising is really about relationships. It's about sharing stories with friends. And it's about being very clear about what it takes to accomplish great things together. I created the Mission Writers course to help you tell better stories, to know what stories to tell, when to tell them, how to tell them, where to find your stories. So go over to missionwriters.org. That's Mission Writers, like you're writing. Missionwriters.org has all the details on the course and on the group coaching program. So you have two options. And if you love a missionary or a nonprofit leader who needs this course, gift certificates are available. So check it out at missionwriters.org and let's make 2024 your best year ever.